Lucas stood in front of a room full of people, family, friends, even his rival, holding an unopened envelope like a loaded weapon. The tension was razor sharp as he looked Brad in the eye and said, "Let's find out who the real man is." Moments later, gasps filled the room, someone broke into sobs, and Brad's face went pale like the ground had vanished beneath him. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Lucas Carter had always believed strength was quiet, that real men didn't need to dominate a room, only hold it together when it fell apart. He wasn't flashy. He didn't have Brad's swagger, Brad's bark, Brad's performative alpha energy that cracked beers louder than it cracked character. But Lucas had a spine made of tempered steel and a heart wired for duty, to love without conditions, to protect without needing applause. So when Brittany told him, eyes wide and scared, that the baby she was carrying wasn't his, Lucas didn't flinch. He'd taken a long breath, nodded once, and held her hand tighter. She braced herself for impact. It never came. His reply was quiet, like him. "That baby deserves a father who stays. I'm staying." Their life wasn't perfect. There were whispers. Brittany's mother never warmed to him. Brad loomed like a storm cloud, loud, unpredictable, always circling. But Lucas didn't engage. He worked 2 jobs, saved every dime, and showed up for every prenatal visit, every 3 a.m. panic, every doctor's call. He didn't need a trophy to prove his worth. The baby's heartbeat on the monitor was enough. But Brad? Brad wasn't interested in fatherhood until it became a power play, until he realized someone else was doing the job he'd never wanted, and doing it better. And that burned. The second birthday party was meant to be a celebration, not a confrontation. There were balloons, folding chairs, half-deflated inflatables. Lucas had spent the morning hanging paper streamers with cartoon dogs, wiping down rented tables, and quietly humming the theme song to keep the toddler giggling. Then Brad showed up, uninvited and loud, like a beer-soaked grenade. He swaggered through the gate with a plastic cup and cheap cologne, slapping backs, pretending he belonged. Lucas stayed calm. He always did. Brittany's eyes flicked nervously between them. She knew Brad had come for one thing, to assert dominance. Not for the child, not out of love. Then came the moment. Brad, standing near the grill with everyone in earshot, lifted his drink and said, "Cheers to Lucas, stepping up, raising a kid that ain't his. No real man would do that." The air turned solid. Conversations died mid-sentence. Someone dropped a plate. Brittany's mouth opened, then closed. Her father looked at the ground. And Lucas. Lucas stared at Brad like he was looking through glass. Not angry, just awake. Because something in him shifted right then. The silence didn't break him. It sharpened him. Brad's war wasn't about fatherhood. It was about dominance. His sudden demand for custody wasn't love-driven. It was control-fueled. He didn't show up with lullabies or diaper bags. He showed up with paperwork, insults, and just enough swagger to rattle the fragile lines of peace Lucas had been holding together with white knuckles. The weeks that followed that backyard ambush turned every interaction into a minefield. Brad wanted visitation rights, though he barely knew the child's favorite color. He insisted on parental input, but couldn't recall the pediatrician's name. He even demanded a say in what the boy would be called, because naming is a father's right. Never mind that he hadn't been there for the naming. Never mind that Lucas had been whispering that name into lullabies since the night the child was born. Lucas didn't fight back. Not because he couldn't, but because he believed real men didn't throw punches in playgrounds. He trusted that the truth would speak loudest in silence, that love could outlast noise. But Brad didn't attack directly. He worked in shadows, whispered doubt into corners of family functions, made offhand comments loud enough for others to hear but quiet enough to claim innocence. "He doesn't even have your eyes, man." "Let's be honest, Lucas. You're just the guy keeping the seat warm." The venom was relentless. Every dig chipped at something brittle in Lucas. Brittany tried to stay neutral, but neutrality is a choice only the unaffected can afford. Brad started talking about lawyers, custody battles, DNA tests. He wasn't after the child. He was after Lucas's place. The worst part? It worked. Brittany began hesitating. Just a second too long before backing Lucas up in conversations. Just a flicker of uncertainty when Brad pushed her buttons. Not because she stopped believing Lucas loved her, but because Brad's threats slithered through her nerves like ice water, and Lucas wouldn't stoop low enough to bite back. Then came the night that rewired everything. Lucas sat in his truck, parked across the street from Brittany's apartment. Rain peppered the windshield like warning shots. He wasn't there to spy. He just wanted to be close, to protect from a distance. And then he heard it. Brad's voice, drunk and raw, carried across the pavement. "She doesn't even know if I'm the dad, bro. She was with 2 of us that month." Lucas didn't move, didn't blink. Time didn't just slow. It hollowed out. In that moment, every insult, every doubt, every silent wound stitched itself into something surgical. He hadn't raised another man's child. He might have raised his own. And Brad didn't even know it. Lucas didn't sleep the night he heard Brad's confession. Not because he was heartbroken, but because he was finished. Done absorbing punches in silence. Done watching a man treat fatherhood like a crown to be snatched just to prove a point. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, while a quiet storm settled in his chest. Not rage, something colder. Precision. Calculation. The next morning, he didn't mention the drunken outburst. He didn't confront Brittany. No accusations, no demands. Just a quiet breakfast with the boy in his lap, feeding him tiny spoonfuls of oatmeal while the cartoon dog on TV barked in the background. Later that day, he made the call. Brad, oblivious to how badly he'd overplayed his hand, picked up with his usual bark of superiority. Lucas didn't flinch. "You want the truth? Let's get it. Paternity test. You, me, clean break." Brad didn't hesitate. His ego couldn't resist. He probably imagined a courtroom. Imagined Lucas being asked to step aside while he posed for victory photos holding a certificate that said, biological. Lucas scheduled the test the next day. He didn't tell Brittany until the paperwork was ready. When he handed it to her, she stared at it like it was a betrayal carved into paper. Her eyes welled up. "You don't believe me?" He did. That wasn't the point. Lucas wasn't seeking truth. He was building proof. Proof that couldn't be spun or manipulated or erased with another smug remark at a birthday party. "Let's settle this," he said, his voice level. "For good." Brittany signed with trembling fingers. The week that followed crawled. Every day felt like it was holding its breath. Brad, of course, couldn't stop talking. Online, in person, at the daycare. He said things like, "Lucas is sweating," and "I'll finally get my son back," as if parenthood were a trophy, not a responsibility. Lucas didn't respond. He was busy making arrangements. When the envelope arrived, thick with finality, Lucas didn't open it. He sealed it in another envelope and wrote one thing on the front. Meeting. He booked the local community center. Not a courtroom, not a front porch confrontation. A room. Neutral, public, undeniable. He called Brittany, her parents, Brad, and his own family. Told them it was about the child's future. No one knew what to expect. People arrived dressed like they were attending a tense family mediation. Brad came in late, loud and smiling like a man about to reclaim stolen land. "Finally," he said, clapping Lucas on the back. We're putting the wannabe dad in his place. Lucas didn't look at him. He was already staring at the envelope on the table, the one that would speak louder than anything he'd ever said. The room wasn't grand. Linoleum floors, folding chairs, the smell of coffee in a metal urn no one touched. But it had the weight of a courtroom. And Lucas Carter stood in the center like a man who had already served his sentence. He didn't clear his throat, didn't preface his words with excuses or emotion. He simply lifted the envelope like it was a verdict. Because it was. We did the paternity test. Because someone said a real man wouldn't raise another man's child. A few heads turned toward Brad instinctively. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, lips curled in premature satisfaction. Brittany sat stiffly beside her mother, who clutched her purse with both hands like it might fly away. Lucas unfolded the first page with the precision of a surgeon. Brad Johnson, he read, eyes moving from the paper to the room. You are not the father. It hit like a detonation. Audible gasps sliced through the air. Brittany's breath left her in a choked sob as her hands flew to her mouth. Her father looked away, jaw clenched. Brad blinked once, twice. All the color drained from his face. Someone near the back whispered, Wait. Then who? The words hung in the air like fog. But Lucas wasn't finished. He reached for the second sheet, one he hadn't told anyone existed, and held it up. And just to be thorough, he said, eyes locking on Brad, I did my test too. This time, the silence wasn't just tense, it was reverent. He unfolded the page. Lucas Carter, you are the biological father. Time fractured. Brittany dropped into her chair like gravity had doubled. She was sobbing now, not out of guilt, not entirely, but out of release. The pressure, the tension, the war. It collapsed in that instant. Brad didn't move. He was no longer the loudest man in the room. He wasn't a man at all in that moment, just a hollow shell draped in arrogance. Lucas didn't raise his voice, didn't flex. He didn't need to. He looked at Brad with eyes like stone and said only, Looks like I've been a real man all along. And then, one by one, chairs scraped against tile. Not in outrage, not in shock. In respect. They stood for a man who had been spit on, mocked, doubted, and never broke. A man who held his truth like a sword behind his back until the moment came to draw it clean. Lucas didn't need applause. The silence said it all. He hadn't just won. He'd rewritten what being a father meant.